This happened a few months ago. I was 35 and working as a social worker. I thought moving to Willow Creek would be peaceful. The small town was nice, but things weren't as calm as I hoped. I still can't shake what happened. One afternoon, I sat in my office, sifting through case files. It was quiet, and that usually felt off. I stumbled upon a report about the Folling family. They had 12 kids but no birth certificates for any of them. I thought that was strange, so I decided to pay them a visit. That I parked in front of their house. It looked normal, but something about it felt wrong. I knocked on the door, and after a moment, a woman answered. She smiled, but her eyes were flat. I introduced myself and asked about the kids. The air felt heavy, as if it knew something I didn't. Inside, I saw the children. They were spread out in the living room, staring blankly. I said hello, but they didn't respond. Instead, I heard soft whispers, like a chant. I thought they were just shy, but dread crawled up my spine. It felt like I stepped into a different world that I came back to visit several times. Each time, the kids didn't warm up. They just stayed in their spots and watched me. One day, I heard two of them talking. They mentioned the darkness and how they told their parents about it. Those words sent a chill through me. Weeks went by. I dug into the family's history and found rumors about disappearances in the past. The more I learned, the more I felt like I was losing my grip. I thought I was there to help, but I was spiraling down something dark. On my last visit, the house felt suffocating. I could sense secrets lurking. I locked eyes with one of the kids. His gaze held fear and something else, something I couldn't place. He whispered, but I didn't catch his words. As I turned to leave, the chill hit me again. Then I heard a voice behind me. You should leave them alone. I whirled around. No one was there. My heart raced, and I felt a rush of panic. I realized I had stepped too close to something I shouldn't touch. I decided to return later, but dread settled in my stomach, what lay hidden in the whispers from a family with no past. I walked away, feeling the shadows close in around me. I knew I was nearing the edge of a terrifying truth. Something was waiting for me, something dark and powerful. I glanced back at the house, wishing I hadn't knocked on that door. I spent the next few days trying to shake off the feeling of unease. I buried myself in work, hoping to avoid thoughts of the Folling family. But the whispers haunted me. I couldn't ignore the kids any longer. I felt responsible. They needed help, and I was determined to find out what was happening. On a chilly Saturday morning, I decided to drive back to their house. The sun fought to break through the gray clouds, but shadows hung heavy over the neighborhood. As I parked, I noticed something odd. The front door was ajar. I hesitated. Should I knock again? But something pulled me inside. I stepped through the door, careful not to push it wide open. The house felt different. It was eerily quiet. The whispers I had heard before were absent, replaced by a thick silence. I called out, "Hello. Is anyone home?" My voice echoed, but there was no response. I walked down the hallway, glancing at family pictures that lined the walls. The smiles felt forced. I reached the living room and froze. The children were there, but they weren't sitting in their usual spots. They stood in a circle, staring blankly downward. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Guys? I tried to break the tension. They didn't acknowledge me. Instead, they began to sway slightly, as if caught in some unseen rhythm. I swallowed hard. I had to get closer. I stepped forward, and as I did, one of the boys looked up at me. His eyes were wide with fear. "Don't," he whispered, but the word was barely audible. "It's coming." "Coming? What do you mean?" I leaned down, feeling a mix of concern and urgency. Something deep in my gut told me this was serious, but before he could answer, the others turned in unison to look at me. Their vacant expressions transformed into something unsettling. A low murmur grew louder, rising up around me like a wave. The sound resonated, blending with the creaking of the house. I felt dizzy that I stumbled back, shaking my head. Stop it. What is happening? The room felt alive as the children's whispers intertwined with my rising panic. Then I heard a crashing sound from the kitchen, followed by a deep, rumbling voice. Leave them. My heart raced. I turned and rushed toward the kitchen. I didn't know what I was afraid of, but I knew I had to confront it. As I swung the door wide, my breath caught. The kitchen was empty, but the atmosphere felt charged. The shadows seemed to pulse, thick and dark. I turned back, fist clenching, but the kids were gone. Anxiety clawed at me. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, and the number was unfamiliar. Before I could think twice, I answered. Hello. Stay away from the Follings. The voice was low, almost a growl. You're in over your head. I dropped the phone, staring at the empty space where the kids had just been. My mind raced. Who was that? What did they mean? I felt a sudden weight pressing down on me. I needed answers, but I realized I was in deeper than I ever expected. That I walked out into the daylight, heart still pounding. I glanced back at the house. Whatever was happening there, it wanted to keep its secrets safe. And I was determined to uncover them. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was waiting for me around the corner. I drove home, my mind racing. I didn't know what I had just witnessed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that danger lurked close. That voice on the phone echoed in my head, but I couldn't ignore the children. Whatever was happening, it felt wrong. I pulled into my driveway and paced the living room, trying to process it all. Images of the children swaying filled my thoughts. I needed to act before it was too late. The last thing I wanted was to stir up trouble, but they were in distress, and I had to do something. The following day, I decided to visit the local library. I needed information, anything that might connect to the Follings. When I arrived, the scent of old paper greeted me. The library was nearly empty, with one or two other patrons scattered among the shelves. I approached the reference section, hoping to find something, anything, about the family that I spent hours sifting through old newspaper clippings and local records, feeling increasingly exhausted and frustrated. But finally, something caught my eye. An article from over a decade ago mentioned a small adoption agency that had shut down abruptly. A photo caught my attention. In the background, I saw a faded image of a family. All 12 kids were there, and standing beside them was a couple that looked hauntingly familiar. The Follings. That I leaned in closer. The article detailed reports of irregularities in their adoptions. None of the children had proper birth certificates. There were whispers of something sinister, but the article stopped short of making any accusations. Why did no one ever follow up? Just then, a voice interrupted my thoughts. Are you looking for something specific? A librarian with thick glasses peered at me curiously. I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to share what I had learned. I found this article about the Follings, I began, carefully. Do you remember anything about them or the agency? Her expression shifted. It's an old story. People don't talk about it much around here. Best to leave it be. Why? I pressed. If there are questions, some things are best kept quiet, she said firmly. The more you dig, the more you might regret it. Her tone sent chills down my spine. I thanked her and quietly left the library, feeling a strange heaviness in my chest. As I drove home, I couldn't shake her warning. My desire to help the children warred with the fear that I might be putting myself in danger. Once home, I replayed what I had discovered. If the kids didn't have birth certificates, what did that mean for their future? Why had the agency closed? I had more questions than answers, and it felt like the shadows were closing in. Just as I turned the corner onto my street, my phone buzzed again. This time, the screen flashed a message: "You are being watched." A cold shiver ran through me as I scanned my surroundings. I parked and hurried inside, locking the door behind me. Someone was watching. I felt it. And deep down, I knew I couldn't stop now. I had to find the answers. Before it was too late. The next day, I had to gather my courage. I couldn't let fear stop me, not now. I needed to learn more about the Follings. I decided to visit my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins. She had lived in the neighborhood for years and always seemed to know everything that went on around here. When I knocked on her door, she answered with a warm smile, but I didn't waste any time with small talk. "Do you remember the Follings?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Her smile faded instantly. "Why are you asking about them?" I hesitated. "I heard some things, and I just things you shouldn't," she interjected, stepping back a little, her eyes darting as if she feared someone might overhear us. "Best to keep your distance from that family." "Why? What happened?" She looked around quickly, then ushered me inside. The dim light of her living room barely illuminated the countless knickknacks cluttering the shelves. They had all those kids, and everyone thought it was sweet at first. But then people started asking questions. Questions like what? My heart pounded as I leaned in closer. Questions about where those kids came from. I remember a woman from the agency coming by once. She had this nervous look about her. Not the type to be trusted. Mrs. Jenkins shivered visibly. Then, one day, they just disappeared, packed up and left in the night. Left? I was shocked. What about the kids? No one knew. Some said they were taken away. Others thought they were being hidden. Her voice dropped to a whisper. There were rumors, bad things, awful things. I felt my hope slipping away. What did bad things even mean? What did you hear? Nothing solid. Just whispers. Children forget who they are, lose themselves. But the worst was that they were always watched. It was like a shadow followed them. I shuddered at the explanation. I needed more information. Did you ever see them? The kids? She shook her head. Just glimpses. Mostly playing in the yard. But they were different. Even back then, it felt off, like they were in a trance or something. My breath quickened. I had seen that exact thing the other night, the children swaying outside. What was really happening? As I left Mrs. Jenkins' house, I felt a mix of dread and determination. I couldn't let fear control me. I needed to go to the police. Maybe they'd follow up on my suspicions. I took out my phone, ready to call, but stopped short. The voice from the night before echoed in my mind. That nagging feeling of being watched surged back. I turned, expecting someone might be behind me. I glanced around, heart pounding in my ears, but saw nothing. Then I heard a faint sound, like footsteps on gravel. I froze, tension coiling in my stomach. I turned back but found only the empty street. Had someone been following me? I hurried away from the house, slipping into my car. As I drove toward the police station, I caught a flash of movement in my rearview mirror. Someone was indeed behind me. They were close enough that I could make out a shadowy figure through the car window. Panic kicked in. Who were they? My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I made a sharp turn, feeling adrenaline surge. I couldn't just go to the police anymore. I needed to figure this out myself, but as I sped away, I knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. I took the next corner, my heart racing, desperately trying to shake the figure behind me. It was a dark sedan, and the driver was relentless. I couldn't see their face, but every fiber of my being screamed that this person was connected to the Follings. My mind raced with possibilities. Were they dangerous? Did they know I was asking questions? I had to act fast. My instincts nudged me to head toward the old abandoned school nearby. I wasn't sure why that seemed like a safe choice, but the place was far from any busy streets, and I hoped I could lose them there. I pressed down on the accelerator, weaving through the quiet streets, glancing in the mirror again. The sedan was still behind me. As I pulled into the school parking lot, I skidded to a stop, heart pounding. I jumped out of the car and sprinted toward the building, the heavy door creaking as I pushed it open. Inside, darkness wrapped around me like a thick blanket. Dust danced in the beams of sunlight filtering through the filthy windows. My eyes adjusted quickly, landing on the long, empty hallway that I could hear footsteps behind me. My pursuer had followed me in. The adrenaline coursed through my veins as I ducked into a nearby classroom, the door barely closing before the footsteps grew louder. The sound stopped just outside. I held my breath, straining to listen. My mind raced as I thought about the Follings. What if this stranger was connected to them? What if they were here to intimidate anyone asking questions? I needed information. I fumbled in my pocket for my phone, but the battery was dead. Panic threatened to consume me. I looked around the classroom, the faded posters and overturned desks echoed stories long forgotten. An old desk in the corner caught my eye. I rushed over and opened a drawer, finding nothing but dust and a few forgotten papers. My heart sank, when I saw it. Tucked beneath the papers was a small notebook. I yanked it out, flipping through the yellowed pages. Names were scrawled in different handwriting, some crossed out, others marked with ink stains. My heart skipped. One name stood out: Ella Folling. There were notes beside the name that made my skin crawl: found in the park, asleep in the car, and don't let them take her. I was about to dig deeper when the door creaked open. I barely had time to hide behind a nearby desk. My fear heightened as I froze, hoping they wouldn't see me. The footsteps entered the room, and I could just make out a shadow passing under the desk. "Where are you?" A voice called out, smooth yet threatening. "I know you're in here." I held my breath, my pulse thundered in my ears. They moved around the room, slowly searching, checking each corner. My mind raced with possibilities. Would they find me? Would I have to confront them? Just before they reached my hiding spot, the sound of a loud crash echoed from the hallway. The stranger hesitated, turning toward the noise. This was my chance. I had to get out. I slid out from behind the desk, heart pounding, and made a run for the door. As I dashed out into the hallway, I knew I was stepping deeper into a dangerous game. There was something more at stake here than I understood, and now it was personal. I needed to uncover the truth about the Follings and fast. But as I flew down the corridor, the feeling of being watched washed over me once again, and a chilling realization hit me: this wasn't just about them anymore. Someone was determined to keep their secrets buried. And I was in deeper trouble than I thought. I bolted down the dimly lit hallway, my breath coming in quick gasps. The pounding of my heart mixed with the distant echo of footsteps, urging me to move faster. I glanced back, but I couldn't see anyone. Maybe they had gone after the source of the crash. I took the opportunity to slip into an old storage room just off the hallway. Inside, I pressed myself against the wall and strained to listen. The room was filled with dust-covered furniture and forgotten supplies. A single, rotting desk leaned precariously against the wall, but I didn't have time to explore. I needed to figure out my next move. Outside, I heard a door slam, followed by muffled shouts. "Split up. Check everywhere." The voice was deep, aggressive. My stomach dropped. They weren't just searching for a person, they were hunting for something or someone. I had to get out of here before they found me. I tiptoed to the doorway and peeked out into the hallway. It was empty for the moment. I slipped out, desperate to find an exit. A flicker of movement caught my eye down the corridor, making my heart race again. I dashed toward the nearest exit sign glowing ominously in the dark. When I finally reached the door, I paused, hand on the knob. What if they were waiting for me outside? I was out of time to second-guess myself. I turned the knob and burst through the door. I stumbled into a side yard, surrounded by tall grass that swayed in the wind. My car was parked just beyond the overgrown area. The dark sedan was nowhere in sight, but the anxiety in my gut told me that it wouldn't be long before they realized I was gone. I sprinted towards my vehicle, willing every muscle in my body to move faster. As I reached the car, my mind raced back to the notebook. Ella's name echoed in my thoughts. Whoever had written those notes clearly knew something about her. I needed to find more information. But I also needed to get away from here, but where? Suddenly, I heard a voice from behind me. You think you can just run away? I froze. The voice was eerily calm, but I recognized it. It was the same voice from the school. I turned, adrenaline pumping through my veins as I squinted into the shadows. Who are you? I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a man in dark clothing, his face partially obscured by a cap. My heart sank. This was no coincidence. He was here for me and for the secrets I'd just started to uncover. You shouldn't have come here, he said, taking a step closer. Now you've put yourself in a dangerous place. I had to think fast. With nowhere to run but into the car, I took a deep breath, hoping to find a sliver of courage. What do you know about Ella Folling? His eyes narrowed. More than you can imagine. Then he lunged toward me. I jumped into the car, slamming the door shut just in time. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys, my mind racing. The engine roared to life, but my gut told me this was just the beginning. The chase wasn't over. A new danger was closing in, and now I was more determined than ever to find the truth about the Follings. As I slammed the car into reverse, I knew I had stepped into a web of secrets that someone was willing to kill to protect. I tore out of the side yard, heart racing as I glanced in the rearview mirror. The man had backed away, watching me drive off. But I knew it wouldn't be long before he regrouped with whoever he'd been with. I had to think quickly, every second counted. The road felt blurry as I drove, thoughts racing through my mind. What did the man know about Ella? Why were they after her? I had so many questions, but no clear answers. I needed a plan. I turned into a nearby diner, the flickering neon lights welcoming me into the dark. As I pulled into the parking lot, I scanned the surroundings for any signs of trouble. No sign of the dark sedan. I parked far from the entrance, hoping to stay out of sight. I stepped out, the cool night air hitting my face as I hurried inside. The diner was nearly empty, just a few scattered patrons sitting in booths, lost in their own worlds. I slid into a booth at the back, hoping to blend in. A waitress approached, and I quickly ordered coffee, trying not to appear nervous. Once she left, I pulled out my phone and began searching for any information on Ella Folling. There had to be something, some record or mention of her. The more I read, the more troubling it became. Adopted, yes, but no birth certificates. What did that even mean? While scrolling, I noticed someone watching me from across the diner. A man in a worn leather jacket leaned against the counter. He was too calm, too still, like a predator waiting for its prey. My stomach tightened. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was connected to the man from the school. I did my best to ignore him, but I could feel his eyes burning into my back. The seconds turned into minutes, and I started to rethink my decision to stop here. I needed to leave. Suddenly, my phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. Stop digging into the Follings, and you might just stay alive. A cold wave of fear washed over me. They knew I was trying to find answers. My hands shook as I read it again. I glanced at the man again. He was walking toward me. I didn't wait. I jumped up, stumbling over my feet as I tried to dash for the exit. My heart pounded, and my instincts kicked in. As I pushed through the door, I heard a voice calling behind me. Hey! Stop! I didn't look back. I raced towards my car, the adrenaline flooding my veins. I thought about the notebook, about what I'd seen. If the man behind me was connected to the Follings, I needed to find them first. I couldn't back down now, not after everything I had uncovered. When I got to my car, I threw open the door and slumped into the driver's seat. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I took a deep breath. I couldn't let fear control me. I had to find Ella. Just as I put the keys in the ignition, I heard a loud bang. My heart dropped as I realized the sound was more than a door slamming. That's when I saw a dark figure sprinting towards me, and this time, he wasn't alone. I barely had time to react. The figure was closing in fast. My pulse raced as I fumbled with the keys. I knew I needed to get out of there. The engine roared to life just as the silhouette reached my car. "Hey!" a voice yelled. "Stop. We need to talk." I peered through the windshield. It was the man from the diner, but there was someone else with him, a tall woman, dark hair whipping around her face like a storm. Something about her seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. Without thinking, I slammed the car into reverse and threw my foot down on the gas. The tires screeched as I backed up, narrowly missing a garbage bin. I straightened the wheel and shot forward, hurtling out of the parking lot. I glanced in the mirror. They were chasing me. I could see the woman's expression, determined and intense. It felt like they were more than just people after answers. They were coming for me, and they weren't going to stop easily. The streets blurred past as I drove. I needed to think. Fast. I had to find a safe place to regroup. I remembered a friend, a journalist who had a nose for trouble and connections that could help. I pushed the speed limit, praying to avoid any roadblocks. Glancing at my phone, I pondered texting him, but my hands shook too much to type. I needed to focus on the road and the figures gaining on me. They were relentless, and my heart raced with fear mixed with desperation. Suddenly, a thought hit me: the Follings. Whatever this woman knew, maybe it would reveal something about Ella. Maybe it was a connection I could exploit if I could just get close enough that I swerved around a corner, hoping to lose them in the back streets. I spotted a gas station up ahead. It was my best shot. I drove in, tires screeching as I pulled up to the far side. Before I could even catch my breath, I jumped out and ducked behind a row of pumps. I peered around the edge, holding my breath. The dark sedan slid into the lot, and I watched the pair sprinting toward the entrance. I fought the urge to shout or call for help. I had to think clearly. I rummaged through my pockets and found that notebook. While the professor's notes and Ella's history flashed through my mind, something new clicked, like missing pieces of a puzzle suddenly falling into place. There had to be more than just an adopted past, there had to be a reason for the secrecy. Just then, something caught my eye. A child's drawing lay crumpled near a trash can. My heart raced. It was unmistakably the same style as the one Ella had given me, depicting a family. But along with the picture was a small slip of paper. I dashed over, snatching it up. As I unfolded it, my breath caught. A name and an address, a possible lead. But before I could process it, I heard footsteps growing louder, and I knew they were coming back. I had to move, and fast. Just as I turned to bolt, the exit was blocked by the man from the diner, his other half approaching behind him. I was cornered. In that instant, I realized I had to confront them to get to the truth. I squared my shoulders, ready to fight for answers, but the only response I got was a smirk from the man. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked, and that was when everything went dark. When I woke up, I was lying on a cold concrete floor. My head throbbed, and my mouth felt dry. Panic swirled in my chest. I pushed myself up, squinting in the dim light. I was in what looked like an abandoned storage room, piles of boxes stacked against the walls, dust swirling in the stale air. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding small in the wide space. No answer. I took a deep breath and struggled to my feet. My heart raced as I glanced around, searching for an escape. The door was closed tight, but I could hear voices muffled just beyond it. "The kid had something. We can't let him get away." It was the man from the diner. His tone was low but urgent. "I don't care what he has," the woman snapped. We're not losing our chance. Not now. My stomach dropped. They were debating my fate. I needed to move. I crept to the door, careful not to make a sound, and pressed my ear against the cold metal. Did you find anything else? The woman asked. Just the drawing, he said. But it's enough to make the connection. We have to act fast. That snapped something into place. They were talking about the child's drawing. Whatever it was leading to, it clearly mattered. And if they were going to act fast, I had to figure out how to get out of here. Did I scan the room? The boxes looked unstable, piled too high. But if I could create a distraction, maybe I could slip out behind them. I edged closer to a stack and shoved hard. The boxes tumbled over with a loud crash. Footsteps thundered towards the door. Get back! The man shouted, but I was already making my move. I rushed to my left, finding an old window. It was high, but the sight of a fire escape just outside gave me a glimmer of hope. That I scrambled up a nearby pile of boxes, my heart pounding in my ears. I managed to get my fingers on the window ledge when the door swung open, and a woman burst in. Where is she? Stopped, eyes widening at the sight of me. I didn't hesitate. I threw myself through the window, my body barely clearing the frame before I hit the metal ladder of the fire escape. I descended quickly, adrenaline pushing me forward, but I knew they wouldn't give up easily. That I hit the ground running, desperate for the safety of the alley behind the building. It was night now, the shadows wrapping around me as I dashed down the deserted street. But my earlier confidence was crumbling. I had no plan and no idea where to turn next. And then I remembered the address from the slip of paper. It felt like a lifeline. I pulled out my phone, frantically searching for directions. The tension in my gut twisted tighter as I realized the address was only a few blocks away. I could get there before they caught up with me, but as I turned the corner, I skidded to a halt. A familiar car was parked on the opposite side of the street. I could see the silhouette of someone inside, watching. This wasn't over. Someone was waiting for me, and it wasn't just the man and the woman. I felt a chill run down my spine. Goodbye, I whispered to myself, but I knew I couldn't turn back. Not now. Not ever. I took a deep breath, gripping the slip of paper tightly, and stepped forward. The address led to an old house just a block away, with tired shutters and cracked paint, standing as if it had stories of its own to tell. I crept toward it, nerves dancing in my stomach. As I approached, I noticed the front door was slightly open. I hesitated. This felt like a trap, a final play in a dangerous game. But I had no other choice. I stepped inside, heart pounding, and the smell of dust and decay enveloped me. The dim interior was quiet, almost too quiet. I could feel an eerie weight in the air. Hello? I called out, my voice trembling. No response. I stepped further in, the floor creaking beneath my weight. Shadows clung to the corners, shifting slightly as I moved. I peered into the living room, a small area with shrouded furniture and flickers of light coming through the curtained windows. There, on the mantel, sat a collection of framed photographs. One caught my eye, a faded picture of children, until I noticed one face distinctly different from the others. Ella. Recognition shot through me, but before I could process it, I heard footsteps outside. They were close, and my heart raced. I darted into a nearby room, nearly colliding with an old table stacked with more photographs and papers. Clenching the drawing I had found, I rifled through the documents, desperate for anything that might explain the connection to the Follings. My hands shook with urgency. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the hallway. I froze, heart hammering. The door banged open, and the man and woman burst into the room, their eyes wide with determination. "Found you," he said, voice dripping with menace. Panicking, I grabbed the first thing I could, a heavy glass paperweight, and hurled it toward them. It smashed against the wall, and they flinched, giving me a moment to dart past them. "Don't let him escape," the woman yelled, and adrenaline propelled me forward. I sprinted through the house, breathless, smashing through tattered curtains and dodging debris. I burst through another door, landing in a narrow hallway leading to the back exit. The sounds of their pursuit grew louder behind me, and I could feel the heat of urgency driving me onward that I flung open the rear door and bolted into the night, scrambling down the steps and gasping for breath. I didn't stop to look back but turned the corner toward the alley, my thoughts racing. I could hear them shouting, their footsteps echoing just meters behind, but I had to make it to the address. Whatever might be waiting there could be my ticket to safety. I hurtled down the alleyway, and as I reached the end, a sharp turn led to an overgrown pathway. I stumbled over roots and dipped beneath low-hanging branches, pushing through the weight of fear. Finally, I emerged onto a deserted street illuminated by a flickering street lamp. I could see the shadows of figures moving in the distance. They were still hunting me, but they weren't close enough. I needed to find cover. In a blind panic, I ducked around the side of the old house that matched the address. I pressed myself against the weathered wood, breathing heavily. I thought I could hear distant voices, the frantic calls of my pursuers fading as the distance grew. Moments stretched into what felt like hours. I glanced up to see dim lights flickering through the cracks in the all-too-familiar window. Recognition washed over me as I realized it was the former residence of the Folling family, but as I stood there catching my breath, uncertainty clawed at me. What secrets lurked inside? What if the truth was more dangerous than I could imagine? I was caught between uncovering the truth and the fear of what I might find. That I took a tentative step toward the door, heart racing once more. Would I find Ella? Would I discover what happened to the Follings? I hesitated, shadows dancing along the building behind me, urging me to rethink my next move, but the sound of footsteps echoed closer. The reality of my pursuers gaining on me forced my decision. I couldn't stand still any longer. I was already too entangled in this terrifying mystery, and whatever was about to happen could change everything. So, I turned the doorknob slowly, pushing the door open just enough to slip inside. The darkness inside welcomed me like an unwanted embrace. Ella? I whispered into the void. In that moment, I felt like I had crossed an almost irreversible line, in acknowledgement of what was hidden in the depths of this seemingly normal place. Uncertainty enveloped me, leaving me unsure of what awaited, but knowing I'd have to face it head-on.